All right, welcome to Unit 1, Notes 2. So today we're going to be solving inequalities, which is really similar to solving equations, except now instead of having an equal sign, we're going to have an inequality. So let's quickly review those steps that we had for solving equations. So why don't you go ahead and pause the video and write this down. So the first step again was to simplify each side by distributing and combining like terms. Our second step was to gather the variables on each side of the equal sign. And our third step was to use addition or subtraction to cancel that constant. Um, the fourth step then is to use multiplication or division to cancel the coefficients. So you practiced that yesterday solving equations. We're going to use it again today for the inequalities. So let's just go back and let's solve a couple of equations just for good practice. So remember, the first thing you want to do is take care of that distributing. So we're taking that -2 and multiplying it into each thing. -2 times 3x gives us -6x. -2 times 5 is -10. And that's set equal to 4x plus 20. Now we're not done with we are done with step number 1, I'm sorry. Now we need to go on to step number 2. We need to get both of our variables to the same side. So I want to bring this 4x over to the other side. I notice that it's a positive 4x. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 4x from both sides. When I do that, I get negative 10x minus 10 is equal to a positive 20. Then I take a look at step 3. Step 3 says that we need to cancel the constant. So I can cancel the constant by adding 10 to both sides. Then we get negative 10x is equal to 30. So the last thing I need to do to get the x completely by itself is to divide both sides by a negative 10. And when I do that, 30 divided by a negative 10, we're dividing a positive by a negative number. So our answer is negative. 30 divided by a negative 10 is negative 3. So we get our answer, x is equal to negative 3. Let's take a look at this one. Now this one looks really, really scary, but it's actually not that bad. What we're going to do is we are going to distribute everything. Now when I take this -7, I'm only distributing it into the things that follow in the parentheses. So again with this 3, I'm only distributing into the things that in the parentheses that follow. So I'm going to take -7 times p, which is -7p, -7 times a positive 7, which is -49. Then I'm going to take 3 times p, which is 3p. And I'm going to take 3 times -4, which is -12. All of that equal to a -17. Now, I'm not done with step number 1 yet. Yes, I distributed, but I still need to combine like terms on this side. So I'm going to take this 7p and this 3p. So -7p plus 3p is going to give me -4p. Then I have this -49 and this -12. And that's going to give me -61 equal to a -17. So now I've finished step number 1. And actually, all of my variables are already on one side, so I can skip step number 2. So my next step is to cancel the constant. So I'm going to add 61 to both sides. When I do that, I get -4p. -17 plus 61 is going to give me a positive 44. So then I'm going to divide both sides by -4, and that's going to give me a -11. So p is equal to a -11. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to pause the video, try number 3 on your own. So distribute that 4 in, combine your like terms, and you're going to have to figure out a way to get your a's on the same side, and then complete steps 3 and 4. Once you're done with that, I want you to go ahead and try number 4. I want you to simplify by distributing, getting all of your b's on the same side, and then I want you to go ahead and unpause the video and move on to the next lesson. So let's take a look at inequalities themselves. So inequalities themselves. Here is your kind of guide to using inequalities, and I suggest you write this down, pause the video, take time and look at it. The reason being is that these are really, really helpful with the word problems. These words down the right column are your best option for the word problems because a lot of those words are actually used in the word problems, and that will help you decide which symbol you need to use. So the first one is the less than symbol. So if you're looking at it in a word problem, you might see things such as not as much as or fewer than. The next one down is the greater than symbol. So you might see that as more than in a problem. Okay, the next one is the less than or equal to, which means that it could, whatever our variable is, it could also be equal to as well as less than the number given. So that's typically seen in word problems as at most or no more than. The next one we have is greater than or equal to, which means that the number could be greater than or it could be equal to the number given. And so that means that it is no less than or at least. Those are the two words you want to look for if you're looking to do greater than. The biggest thing with inequalities, this is at the bottom of your note sheet, is to remember to reverse the inequality symbol when you are multiplying or dividing by a negative number. This is extremely important, okay, because you will get things wrong if you're dividing or multiplying by a negative number. Now, we're actually talking about the number that you are actually dividing. We're not saying if you have a number on the other side that's negative. If the number you're dividing or multiplying to get away from the x or whatever the variable may be, if that is negative, then you have to flip that sign. So let's take a look at some of these inequalities. Let's take a look at number 5. Okay, so this isn't too bad. This is just like, you know, when we were solving equations. So first thing I'm going to do is distribute. Negative 4 times 5 is negative 20. Negative 4 times negative 8 is a positive 32, and that's going to be greater than 33. So we want to keep solving this for W. So we're going to subtract 32 from both sides, and we get a negative 20W. I'm keeping that sign the same right now because all I did was subtract a number, and that's going to be equal to 1. So the last thing I want to do is I want to get W all by itself. So I'm going to divide by negative 20. When I'm dividing by negative 20, I have a little alarm bells going off in my head. And it's telling me, hey, Miss Humbert, you're dividing by a negative number. So when I do that, I know that I need to switch that sign. I need to make it from a greater than sign to a less than sign. And then I can write it as negative 1 over 20. So how does this number deal work? Well, see how this is just a less than symbol. It's not a less than or equal to symbol. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a hash mark. I'm going to call that hash mark negative 1 over 20. And I'm going to put an open circle at that hash mark. Okay, the reason for that is because it's not equal to. W cannot be negative 1 over 20. It has to be less than it. So we want to think less than. If we want to go less than, we want to go to the left of the number. Greater than is to the right, less than is to the left. So we're going to be less than negative 120. So our solution for W is going to the left on our arrow line. It doesn't matter where you put the negative 120 on this line as long as you pick a spot and label it. Okay, just for practice, I want you to try this one on your own. It's a pretty straightforward solving equations problem. Note that this 4 with the K is negative, so at some point you're probably going to have to flip your sign. So go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try it and then practice graphing it. Okay, I'm going to get you started on number 7. So on number 7, what you're going to do is you're going to subtract 4x from both sides. And then you're going to get 5x plus 2 is greater than 15. So I got this far. What I want you to do is finish up that inequality, and then I want you to graph it. Okay, here's your hint when you get to the bottom. You're going to have an open circle at 13/5. So that's the way you can check your answer. So you need to figure out which way the arrow needs to go based on the information that I just gave you. Let's do number 8 together because number 8 is really kind of tricky. So first thing we want to do is I want to get my b by itself. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. Then I get b over negative 3 is less than 5. B over negative 3. Okay, so b is being divided by negative 3. In order to solve for b, I have to do the opposite. The opposite of dividing is multiplying. So I'm going to multiply both sides by a negative 3. That's going to cancel those out. Well, I multiply by a negative number, so those alarm bells are going off in my head, telling me to flip my sign. And then my b is now by itself. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. So now I have my equation solved. All I have to do is graph it. I flipped my sign when it was negative. So I'm going to have an open circle at negative 15. and b is greater than negative 15. Because it's greater than, I'm going to go to the right. It's greater than, so I'm going to the right. Okay? Let's talk about some word problems, because I think word problems sometimes can make things really confusing. So what I want you to do is go ahead and pause the video right now and just take a second to kind of read through this word problem so you can see where you're at and understand what I'm talking about. So if the amusement park is charging $15 for admission, that means that when we walk through the door, we have to pay $15. No matter how many rides we go on, I have to pay a flat fee of $15. I'm going to let X represent the number of rides that I'm going on. So for every X ride that I go on, I am paying $2.50. Now, I am going to the park with $60. I cannot spend more than $60. I just have that $60. So I can spend at most $60. So if you look at your chart, at most is represented by this symbol. So we want the less than part to be the money we spend. We can't spend more than $60. So the bigger part, the mouth that's opening, I call it the alligator mouth. The alligator mouth always eats the bigger thing. So we want the 60 to be the bigger thing. And now we're going to solve this for x to see how many rides we can go on. I'm going to subtract 15 from both sides. And then I get 250x is less than or equal to 45. Divide both sides by 250. And then you get that x is less than or equal to 18. Again, it's a word problem, so make sure you label your answer. We cannot go on more than 18 rides. I could go on exactly 18 rides, I could go on 17 rides, but I cannot go on 19 rides. All right, let's take a look at this next one. For number 10, you have $18.50 to spend on pizza. It costs $14 plus $75 for each additional topping, tax included. Write and solve an inequality to find the maximum number of toppings the pizza can have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up for you, and then I want you guys to solve it. All right, so before we even start buying toppings, I have to pay $14 for my pizza, period, even if it's just cheese. Yeah, I have to spend $14. So I'm going to let X represent the number of toppings I can get. Let's call it toppings. How many toppings I can get. Okay, so I have $14, and then for every X topping that I get, I'm paying 75 cents. Okay, it tells me that I have $18.50. I can spend no more than $18.50. So it has to be less than or equal to $18.50. So remember, $18.50 is the bigger thing. I can't spend more than that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and let you guys solve this for X. So why don't you pause the video, solve it for X. Figure out what is the most amount of toppings you can have. Okay? Then, once you're done, check out this last one. I want you to see if you can write this problem. Okay? Figure out how many games you can go to before a season pass will come into effect. Okay, so it costs $15 and a season pass is $170. So for each X game that you go to, it's going to cost you $15. So see if you can set up an inequality and solve it. So let's say you get a decimal, which you should. If you get a decimal, you can't go to, let's say, 5.4 games. You could only go to 5. They're not going to let you go to 0.4 of a game. So you'd have to round down. So keep that in mind as you're working through this problem. Remember to take the quiz once you're done.